Welcome back to Griffonomics. It is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. And I have to be honest with you, I almost scrapped today's deep dive.
Oh, yeah? Why is that?
I was sitting at my desk last night, going over the notes, looking at the ticker MDWD, and I was reading their product description.
Mm-hmm.
And it says right there that their core technology is based on pineapples.
It does sound a bit like a pitch from a health food store, doesn't it?
It sounds like a joke. I mean, usually we're here talking about AI infrastructure or quantum computing or, massive macro shifts.
Right. High finance.
And here I am about to spend an hour talking to our listeners about a company that squeezes enzymes out of fruit stems. It just felt, I don't know, unserious.
I get it. I really do.
But then, and I looked at who their biggest customer is. And it is not Whole Foods.
No, it is not.
It's the United States Department of Defense.
And that right there is where the story gets interesting.
Yeah.
That's the cognitive dissonance that makes this company so unique.
Right. So you're going to have to explain this to me like I'm 5 because my brain is genuinely struggling to connect these dots.
That be too.
How do we get from a tropical fruit to like a classified national security asset? Is the Pentagon building a strategic reserve of smoothies or something?
Not exactly, though the reality is almost stranger than that, to be honest.
Okay.
What you are looking at with MediWound, that's the company, MDWD, is a perfect example of what we call the dual-use paradox.
Dual use. Okay, I've heard that. We hear that term thrown around a lot in tech, usually with like semiconductors.
Exactly. NVIDIA chips.
Right. They're for gaming, but they're also for guiding missiles.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
But in the biotech space, it is incredibly rare. I mean, almost unheard of.
Why is that?
Because usually a biotech company is a binary gamble.
Yep.
You know the drill.
Oh, yeah.
You invest a bunch of money, they run a big clinical trial. If the FDA says yes, the stock goes to the moon.
And if the FDA says no, or the data is just okay?
The company goes to zero, it's a crater, it's roulette. You are betting everything on red 7.
And most of the time, the ball lands on black or green.
Exactly. But this dual-use model, it changes the entire physics of the investment. With MediWound, you've got one side of the business that behaves like a classic defense contractor.
Okay, so stable.
Stable, government-backed, recession-proof. It's predictable. That protects your downside. It puts a floor under the stock price.
So that's the bond part of the portfolio, essentially.
That's the bond. But attached to that boring, stable defense contractor is a second business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a high-growth, high-risk commercial biotech that's aiming to disrupt a multi-billion-dollar market. That is your lottery ticket.
So the thesis is effectively you buy the defense bond and you get the biotech lottery ticket for free.
That is the Griffonomics view in a nutshell, yes.
No.
But to really understand why the U.S. government is writing 9-figure checks to these guys and why this isn't just some fruit salad scam, we have to get pretty graphic for a minute.
Okay.
We have to talk about what happens to the human body when skin is destroyed by a severe burn.
All right. I've got my stomach settled. Let's do it. So the mission for today is to really unpack MediWound.
Let's do it.
We're going to look at the tech, which you're calling this enzymatic smart bomb, then the defense moat, and why Uncle Sam is stockpiling it.
Mm-hmm.
After that, the commercial explosion that could be waiting in the wings with this thing called EscharEx.
That's the lottery ticket.
And then finally, we're going to tear apart the balance sheet and the financials because the numbers for 2026 look very, very different than they did in 2025.
It is a massive pivot point year for them.
Okay, so let's start with the science. You said we need to get graphic. I'm looking at the notes, and the enemy here is something called Eschar. E-S-C-H-A-R. What is that?
Eschar is a word that keeps burn surgeons awake at night. It's when you suffer a severe burn, we're talking third-degree thermal, chemical, electrical, the tissue dies.
Right.
But it doesn't just, fall off.
Mm-hmm.
The protein in the skin, the collagen, it gets denatured. It basically cooks. And it forms this hard, leathery, black, dead shell over the wound.
Yeah.
That shell is Eschar.
Is it like a really, really thick scab?
It's so much worse than a scab.
Yeah.
A scab is part of the healing process. It's protecting new skin underneath. Eschar is a prison.
A prison?
Think of it like a tight leather band that's constricting your arm or your leg. As the living tissue underneath tries to swell up from the inflammation, which is a natural response, the Eschar won't stretch. It's dead. It has no give.
So the pressure just builds up inside the limb.
Like a pressure cooker. Exactly. It starts to cut off blood circulation. The pressure crushes the nerves. And if that Eschar goes all the way around a limb, what surgeons call a circumferential burn, causes something called compartment syndrome.
And that sounds bad.
It's a medical emergency. If you don't release that pressure immediately, the tissue inside dies from lack of oxygen. You lose the arm. You lose the leg.
Wow.
Or, even worse, the dead tissue becomes this perfect breeding ground for bacteria, and the patient goes into septic shock and dies.
So rule number 1 of burn care has to be get the Escher off.
Immediately. The clinical term is debridement. You have to remove the dead to save the living.
Okay, so how have we been doing this? I have to assume, since humans have been treating burns for thousands of years, we have a pretty sophisticated way of handling this by now, right?
You would assume that, wouldn't you? But honestly, the old way, the current standard of care, is barbaric.
Barbaric.
I'm not exaggerating.
Okay.
It hasn't fundamentally changed in decades. It involves a surgeon, a sterile operating room, general anesthesia, and a knife.
You're kidding. They just cut it off.
They cut it off. Or they use an instrument called a dermatome, which is basically an electric cheese slicer for skin.
Oh, my God.
They literally slice away layers of the burn, layer by layer.
That sounds incredibly imprecise. How can they tell what's dead and what's still alive?
That is the fundamental problem. It is wildly imprecise. The surgeon is just using their eyes.
Yeah.
And they're looking at a wound that is a total mess of charred tissue, blood, inflammation.
So they're just guessing.
It's an educated guess, but yes. They have to decide, millimeter by millimeter, what is dead and what is viable. And they can't be sure.
And if they get it wrong...
If they leave even a little bit of dead tissue behind, the patient gets a massive infection. So the rule of thumb in burn surgery is grim. It's cut until it bleeds.
Oh, wow. Because if it bleeds, it's living tissue.
Exactly. So to be safe, to make sure they get all the dead stuff, they have to intentionally cut into the healthy tissue underneath.
So they're sacrificing healthy skin just to be sure.
They have to. And this causes massive blood loss. It is excruciatingly painful. And crucially for the patient's recovery, by cutting away that healthy dermis, you are removing the very stem cells that would have helped the skin regenerate on its own.
So the treatment itself actually causes part of the scarring and the long-term damage.
The treatment is a second trauma. That's a perfect way to put it. It's why almost all these patients need extensive skin grafts, because you've basically hollowed out the wound bed.
Okay, I get the picture. It's a horror show. So, enter the pineapple.
Enter the pineapple.
This product is called Nexobrid. How on earth does a fruit enzyme solve a brutal surgical problem?
This is where the biology gets really, really elegant. And we have to be specific here because fruit enzyme sounds so simple, but the biochemistry is actually very complex.
Right.
The active ingredient is a concentrate of what are called proteolytic enzymes, and it's enriched with something called bromelain.
Bromelain. That's the stuff in pineapple stems, right? I've seen that in, like, digestive supplements at the store.
That's the one. But this isn't the stuff you buy at GNC. This is a very specific pharmaceutical-grade formulation, and it's designed to do one thing: attack and dissolve collagen.
Okay, hold on. My skin is made of collagen. If this stuff just eats collagen, why doesn't it eat the healthy skin too? Why doesn't it just dissolve the whole arm?
That is the billion-dollar question. And the answer is the key to the entire company.
Sure.
Think of healthy skin, healthy collagen, like a brand new, tightly woven nylon rope. It's structured, it's hydrated, it's incredibly tough.
Got it.
The enzyme in Nexobrid is like a pair of scissors that is just too dull to cut that rope. It tries, but it just slides right off. It can't get a grip.
Okay, so it can't cut healthy collagen.
Right. But burnt tissue, the Escher, is totally different.
Yeah.
The heat has denatured that collagen. It has unraveled that beautiful tight rope.
So it's frayed.
It's frayed, it's broken, it's chaotic, it's a tangled mess. And the enzyme scissors can grab onto all those loose threads.
Ah, so it's a lock and key mechanism. It only works on the damaged stuff.
Precisely. It locks onto the damaged, denatured collagen and just dissolves it. But the second it hits the healthy, wet, tightly structured collagen of the living dermis, it stops. Chemically, it cannot cut it. It just stops dead in its tracks.
But so it's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy for this.
The one the company uses, which I actually think is pretty apt, is Pac-Man.
Pac-Man.
Yeah. Imagine you mix this stuff up. It's a powder and a gel, and you apply it to the burn.
Okay.
The enzymes are like little Pac-Men, and they are programmed to only eat the ghosts, the Escher. So they move through the maze of the wound, devouring all of the dead tissue.
But they don't eat the walls of the maze.
They completely ignore the walls of the maze, the healthy skin, the blood vessels, the nerves, all of it. They just clean up the ghosts and leave everything else pristine.
And does it actually work like that in the real world, or is that just a nice marketing brochure?
It works. The data is overwhelming. We have the Phase 3 clinical trials, and now we have years of real-world use in over 40 countries.
So what's the process?
You apply the gel, you wait 4 hours, you wash it off.
4 hours?
4 hours.
That's it. You said surgery can take days to schedule and recover from.
Exactly. This is 4 hours at the patient's bedside.
Yeah.
No operating room needed. You wash it off, and Escher is gone. It's just dissolved. And underneath, you see this clean, pink, bleeding, healthy tissue.
And because you didn't have to cut it?
Because you didn't cut it, you preserve that healthy dermis. You preserve the body's own spontaneous healing potential.
Which means fewer skin grafts.
Significantly fewer skin grafts.
Yeah.
Better cosmetic outcomes. Less pain. It's a paradigm shift.
Okay. I am sold on the medical benefit. It sounds like an absolute no-brainer. If I ever get a severe burn, put the pineapple gel on me. Do not bring the cheese slicer.
I think that's a wise choice.
But let's go back to my skepticism at the top of the show.
Yeah.
A better burn cream is great. It's a wonderful medical innovation. But that doesn't explain why the Department of Defense is writing checks.
No, it doesn't.
The U.S. Army isn't in the business of investing in better dermatology just for fun. There has to be a strategic angle.
There is. And this is where we have to shift our thinking from medicine to logistics.
Logistics.
The DoD and the national security agencies, they don't look at Nexobrid as a drug.
What?
They look at it as a solution to a math problem. And the math problem is terrifying.
What's the problem?
It's called a mass casualty event, an MCE.
Okay, so we're talking about a war scenario, a big battle.
War or terrorism or a catastrophic industrial accident. The sources mention things like the Station nightclub fire or that awful nightclub tragedy in Switzerland. But the Pentagon has to plan for the absolute worst-case scenario.
Like what?
Imagine a dirty bomb goes off in downtown Manhattan, or a chemical plant explodes, or a tactical nuclear weapon is used. Suddenly, you don't have one burn patient, you have 500, or 1,000, all at once.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Now, run the math using the old way. Each of those 500 people needs a highly specialized burn surgeon, a fully staffed operating room, an anesthesia team, and hours of surgery.
We don't have 500 burn surgeons in a single city. We probably don't have that many available in the whole country at one time.
We don't have 500 available operating rooms. You run out of resources instantly.
Yeah.
You hit a catastrophic bottleneck. So what happens? Patients are lining up in the hallways, and while they wait for surgery, that Escher is tightening, the infection is spreading, and they are dying.
It's a serial process, one at a time.
You simply cannot surgically debride 500 people at once. It's logistically impossible.
So Nexobrid changes the math on that.
It doesn't just change the math, it changes the entire geometry of the response.
Hmm?
Because Nexobrid is a topical gel, you don't need an operating room. You don't even need a surgeon to apply it.
Who can do it?
A general medic, a nurse, even a properly trained first responder can mix the powder and the gel, apply it to the wound, and wrap it.
So you can treat everyone at the same time.
Parallel processing. You take a sequential surgical bottleneck and you convert it into a parallel medical workflow. You can treat those 500 patients in regular hospital beds. You can set up in a gymnasium, in tents in a park.
You create surge capacity.
You create surge capacity out of thin air. And that, to the Pentagon, is priceless.
That is fascinating. So the government isn't just buying a drug for better outcomes. They are buying time. They are buying the ability to handle a national crisis that would otherwise completely collapse the healthcare system.
Precisely. And that is why BARDA entered the chat.
BARDA, okay, that's the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. We usually hear about them in the context of vaccines or pandemics, right?
Right. BARDA is essentially the venture capital arm of the national security apparatus. Their entire job is to find and fund technologies that bridge the gap between good science and national survival.
And they saw Nexobrid.
They saw the data on Nexobrid and had an epiphany. They realized, this isn't just a better burn treatment. This is a countermeasure. We need this in the national stockpile.
And they have put serious money behind that belief.
Serious money. Since 2015, BARDA has poured over $200 million into this program. And I want to pause on that number for a second.
Okay.
In the biotech world, money always comes with strings attached. If a venture capital firm gives you $200 million, they basically own your company. They take multiple board seats. They dilute your existing shareholders into oblivion.
Right. It's expensive money.
This is non-dilutive funding. It's essentially free money from the government's perspective. They say, here is cash to finish developing the drug. Here is cash to run the final trials. And here's cash to help build the factory.
All because they want the product to exist at the end of the line.
They need the product to exist. It's a matter of national preparedness. So they are literally paying MediWound to de-risk its entire business model.
And this brings us to the stockpile. So they aren't just funding the R&D, they are the end customer. They are buying the finished product just to sit in warehouses.
Yes. They hold it in the strategic national stockpile, in climate-controlled warehouses, just in case the worst happens.
Okay.
And the beauty of this, for an investor, is that it completely decouples revenue from patient demand. Usually a pharma company has to go out and sell a drug to a doctor who gives it to a patient to make money. Here, MediWound gets paid whether there's a single burn victim in the country or not. The government pays for the readiness.
That's the floor you were talking about. That's the defense contractor side of the business.
That's the floor.
But it's getting even more integrated into the military now, isn't it? I saw something in the notes about a backpack version of this.
This is the next evolution, and it's a big deal. See, right now, the current formulation of NexoBrid needs to be refrigerated.
Okay.
That's fine for a hospital. It's fine for a big national stockpile warehouse with perfect climate control.
But it's not fine for a Marine out in the desert or a medic in a forward operating base.
Exactly. If you're in a trench in Ukraine or at a small FOB in Africa, you don't have a pharmacy-grade refrigerator. So the DoD is currently funding, again, they're paying for all of it, the development of a room temperature stable version.
A version you can just throw in a medic's bag.
A backpack formulation. The ultimate goal is to make this part of the standard kit for every combat medic.
And we've unfortunately seen a real-world test case for why this is so important recently with the conflict in Israel.
Yes. It was a grim but powerful validation of the technology in a modern conflict setting.
What happened there?
We saw widespread reports of NexoBrid being used extensively by the IDF to treat both soldiers and civilians. And critically, not just for standard thermal burns from fires.
What else?
Blast injuries, irregular wounds from shrapnel, chemical burns from explosions.
And it works on those kinds of wounds. I would think a shrapnel wound is very different from a burn.
This is where the gel form factor is a huge advantage. If you have a jagged piece of metal embedded in a wound, or really irregular blast pattern, trying to cut that out with a knife is a nightmare.
You'd have to remove huge chunks of flesh.
Huge chunks. The gel, though, it just flows around the irregularity. It seeps into all the cracks and crevices. It seeks out the dead, non-viable tissue wherever it is.
So it cleans the wound with much less collateral damage.
Precisely. And that real-world data from a sophisticated military is being watched very, very closely by NATO.
Of course.
If the U.S. Army officially adopts the backpack version as standard kit, every single NATO ally follows suit. The addressable market suddenly shifts from major burn centers to every soldier's medkit. It's a massive expansion.
Okay, so that's the defense shield. It's robust. We have a product that works. The government pays to develop it, and then the government buys it and stockpiles it. That feels incredibly safe for an investment.
It is.
But let's talk about money. We are recording this on February 10th, 2026. The notes say there is a massive contract that's pending right now. What is the status of that?
This is the first major catalyst on our list for this year. We are expecting the final signature on a new long-term BARDA procurement contract literally any day now.
It's that close.
It's that close.
Yeah.
It was delayed slightly by all the government shutdown theatrics at the end of 2025, but the deal is done in principle. It's just waiting for the final ink.
And what are the terms of that deal? Break it down for me.
We are looking at an estimated 10-year contract.
10 years.
10 years of guaranteed, predictable revenue.
Then what's the dollar value?
It's expected to add between $15 to $20 million in annual revenue starting this year, 2026.
Okay. Now, $15 million, in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't sound like a lot. I mean, a company like Google or Apple makes that in a minute.
For a mega cap, you're right, it's a rounding error. But for a small cap biotech like MediWound, that $15–20 million is everything. It changes the entire financial profile of the company.
How?
You have to look at their operating expenses, their burn rate. And I apologize for the pun.
I was waiting for that
I had to do it. But seriously, look at their SG&A, their R&D costs. That $15–20 million of high-margin, pure profit revenue, it effectively covers their entire overhead.
The entire?
Pretty much. It pays for the lights. It pays the salaries. It pays for the ongoing research.
So the company basically becomes self-sustaining just on the government contract.
That is the holy grail for a small biotech. Most biotechs are just bleeding cash every single day. They are in a constant race against a clock to get a drug approved before they go bankrupt.
Oh, they have to keep going back to Wall Street for more money.
Constantly. They're always issuing new stock, diluting the existing shareholders just to keep the lights on.
And you're saying MediWound doesn't have to do that anymore?
Because of this BARDA contract, they are essentially a break-even or profitable company just on their defense business alone. They don't have to beg Wall Street for cash. They have a fortress balance sheet and control their own destiny.
Which means the stock price has a hard floor. It's not going to zero unless the U.S. government collapses, which is a different set of problems.
A much bigger problem, yes. And that brings us to the asymmetric part of the thesis, because if the downside risk is capped, then we have to ask, what is the upside?
The upside is the commercial market, the lottery ticket. This is the sword to the defense shield.
Exactly. And this is where we leave the niche world of the hospital burn unit and we enter a much, much, much larger world.
Where are we going?
We are talking about chronic wounds.
Chronic wounds, so not burns anymore?
No, completely different market. We're talking about venous leg ulcers, or VLUs, and diabetic foot ulcers, DFUs.
Okay, so these are the terrible wounds that, elderly people get, or people with uncontrolled diabetes that they never seem to heal.
That's them. They can linger for months, sometimes for years.
Mm-hmm.
It is a silent epidemic in this country. It absolutely destroys a person's quality of life. Patients are isolated, they're in constant pain, the wounds can have a terrible odor. It's a tragic condition.
And it's a growing problem, I assume.
It's exploding. Because of the aging population and the ongoing diabetes crisis, the numbers are just going up and up.
So how big is this market financially?
The outpatient market in the U.S. alone is estimated at about $2.5 billion a year.
$2.5 billion. Okay, so that is vastly bigger than the severe burn market.
Orders of magnitude bigger. The burn market is a small, specialized niche. Chronic wounds are a mass market.
And MediWound has a product for this mass market.
They do. It's called EscharEx.
EscharEx. Okay, that sounds like a villain from a comic book.
It stands for Eschar Extraction. And it's basically the same active ingredient as Nexobrid, our pineapple enzyme. Yeah. But it's formulated completely differently.
How so? What's the difference?
Nexobrid, remember, is a high concentration blast. Yeah. It's one application, 4 hours, get the job done. It's intense, so you need pain management. You need to be in a hospital.
Right.
EscharEx is a much lower concentration. It's designed to be gentle. The idea is for daily application, either at home by the patient or at a local wound clinic by a nurse.
But the goal is the same, to debride the wound.
Yes, because just like a burn, a chronic wound gets covered in this layer of dead tissue in something called biofilm. It's a slimy, stubborn layer. Mm-hmm. If you don't clean that junk off, the wound cannot heal.
The wound bed has to be clean.
It has to be clean. You can put the most expensive, fancy, $1,000 skin substitute on top of it, but if the bed is dirty, it won't take. It's a waste of money.
Okay, so this sounds promising. Who is the competition? If this is a $2.5 billion market, surely the big pharma companies are all over this space.
You would absolutely think so. But this is where the story gets just wild. The current king of the hill, the undisputed market leader, is a product called Santai.
Santai, never heard of it.
You haven't, but I promise you every wound care nurse in America has. It generates over $360 million in sales every single year. It is a massive cash cow for its owner.
Okay, so it must be really good then, to do $360 million a year.
Right, let me ask you a question. When do you think Santai was first approved by the FDA?
I don't know. The 90s, maybe early 2000s.
1965. 1965.
You're kidding me. The 60s.
Yeah.
Like, Lyndon B. Johnson was president. The Beatles were on Ed Sullivan.
Yes. We went to the moon, we invented the internet, we cracked the human genome, and doctors are still using a wound ointment from the Kennedy administration.
That's insane. Why? Is it incredibly effective? Is it some miracle drug?
No, and that is the biggest shocker of all.
What do you mean?
MediWound ran a head-to-head Phase 2 clinical trial. This is brave, by the way. Most companies don't do this. They put EscharEx directly up against Santal. The goal was to see who could achieve complete debridement. Totally clean wound bed within a 2-week study window.
A bake-off. So what happened?
In that 2-week window, EscharEx achieved 63% complete debridement.
63%. Okay, that sounds pretty good. And Santal?
0%.
What? Stop. Did you say 0?
0. As in, not a single patient in the Santal arm of the trial achieved a completely clean wound bed in the 2-week time frame.
How is that even possible? You're telling me a drug that sells $360 million a year worked on 0 people in the study. That sounds like a rigged trial. Did they tamper with the data?
It wasn't rigged. It's just that Santal is incredibly, incredibly slow and weak. It works. Eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, if you use it for weeks and weeks and weeks. But in a clinically meaningful 2-week window, it barely scratches the surface.
And EscharEx.
EscharEx got the job done in a median time of just 9 to 11 days. For Santal, the median time was not achieved, which is a clinical way of saying that more than half the patients never got clean at all during the study.
That is staggering. This isn't an incremental improvement. It's not our drug is 10% better. It's infinitely better based on that data.
It is the difference between a Ferrari and a horse and buggy.
Yeah.
And they're racing on the same track.
So I have to ask the cynical question then. If Santal's so bad, why is it still the standard of care? Why are doctors still prescribing it by the truckload?
It's a phenomenon I call the monopoly of inertia. In healthcare, standard of care often just means habit of care. Doctors have been using it for 40 years.
Yeah.
The billing codes are all set up for it. The sales reps have decades-long relationships with the clinics. And most importantly, for the last 50 years, there hasn't been a viable alternative.
Until now.
Until now. EscharEx is the first product in decades that actually brings real clinical efficacy to the table.
So what's the status of EscharEx right now? Can I go out and get it?
Not yet. It is currently in the middle of its big Phase 3 registration study. It's called the VALUE study.
And when do we get the report card on that? When do we see the data?
This is the big one. This is probably the single biggest event in the company's history. The interim results from this Phase 3 trial are expected in the second half of this year, H2 2026.
And what are the odds of success? Be honest, we know Phase 3 trials in biotech fail all the time.
They do. It's a graveyard.
Right.
But usually a Phase 3 trial fails because the fundamental biology is unproven. The company is asking, we don't know for sure if this new molecule actually shrinks tumors in humans.
There's biological risk.
A huge amount.
Yeah.
Here, we know the biology works. It's the exact same active enzyme as Nexobrid. We know it eats dead tissue. It's already approved in 40 countries. For the toughest kind of dead tissue there is, Bernacture.
So the biological risk is...
It's near zero. The main risk here is just execution. Can they run the trial properly and collect the data cleanly? But the science itself, the science is already de-risked, which is why you see analysts pegging the probability of success at anywhere from 85% to as high as 99%.
So let me get this straight. You have a product targeting a $2.5 billion market. It's aiming to kill a zombie monopoly from the 1960s that barely works.
Right.
And it has, let's say, a 90+% probability of technical success.
Correct.
And you're saying we get that potential upside for free because the current stock price is just reflecting the cash on the balance sheet and the defense business.
But that's the free option. That's the core of the asymmetric thesis.
Well, there's always a but. There has to be a catch. If this is so obvious, why is the company still relatively small? What has been holding them back all these years?
The bottleneck. For years, the story was held back by one thing: manufacturing.
They couldn't make enough of it.
They couldn't make enough of the enzyme. You have to remember, this isn't like mixing chemicals in a giant vat. This is bioprocessing. You're extracting a pharmaceutical-grade, sterile, highly concentrated enzyme from a plant stem. It's incredibly difficult to do at scale.
So their growth was capped.
Completely capped. They couldn't even think about launching EscharEx because they didn't have the supply. For years, they were basically rationing Nexobrid to their existing customers.
And what about today, February 2026?
Solved. That problem is solved. They have just commissioned a brand new state-of-the-art sterile manufacturing facility in Israel. It's done.
How much bigger is it?
It's a 6-fold capacity increase, 6x.
Wow.
They are targeting final regulatory approval for the plant from the FDA and the EMA later this year. Once that stamp is on the paper, the bottleneck is gone forever. They can supply the U.S. stockpile, the entire global burn market, and launch EscharEx at full scale.
Okay, so the tech works. The defense floor is solid. The commercial upside is enormous. The manufacturing constraint is fixed. Let's talk about the end game here. Because small, innovative biotechs rarely stay independent forever.
That's true.
Who is looking at this company and licking their chops?
This is my favorite part of the whole thesis. I call it the M&A missing link argument.
Okay, walk me through it.
Look at the broader wound care ecosystem.
Right.
You have these massive multi-billion-dollar giants. Companies like Solventum, that's the recent 3M spinoff.
Right.
Companies like Mundlik, Coloplast, Smith & Nephew. These guys are the titans of the industry.
And what do they sell?
They sell the closure products. The high-tech bandages, the silver-infused foams, the negative pressure pumps, the expensive skin substitutes, all the stuff you put on the wound after it's been cleaned.
Okay, so they come in at step 2.
Right. But here's their strategic problem. They're selling the paint, but they don't own the primer.
I like that analogy. You need to prep the surface first.
You can't use their expensive, high-margin products until the wound is debrided. And right now, the only major debridement option is their competitor's product, Santalel or surgeon's knife.
So their entire business model is dependent on a broken, inefficient first step that they don't control.
Exactly. They don't control the workflow. Now imagine you're the CEO of a company like Momlek, and you acquire MediWound. You own EscharEx. You own the primer. You own the gatekeeper.
So you can go to a hospital and say, use our best-in-class debridement agent, and then follow it with our best-in-class dressing.
Exactly. You bundle it. You control the patient's entire journey from start to finish. You lock out the competition. It is a brilliant strategic move.
And is this just speculation on our part? Or is there evidence of interest?
It's not just speculation. Momlek, the company I just mentioned, already owns about 10% of MediWound stock.
They do.
They are the largest strategic shareholder in the company. They have a seat on the board of directors.
So they are literally sitting in the room watching all of this data come in.
They're watching that Phase 3 value study from the front row seat. And my guess is if that data in the second half of this year is positive, it becomes very, very hard for them to let MediWound stay independent. It's a perfect plug-and-play acquisition for their sales force.
All right. We promised Griffonomics, so we need to get to the hard numbers. We've been talking a lot of concepts, but let's look at the bank account. As of their last filing, December 31st, 2025, where do they stand?
They are in an incredible position of strength. Their cash position is roughly $54 million.
And what about debt?
Zero debt.
Love to hear that. In a high interest rate environment like we have now, zero debt is a superpower.
Absolutely. Now let's look at the revenue growth. 2025 actuals came in around $17 million, which is okay, but it's not explosive growth.
But 2026 is the inflection point you mentioned.
Right. With the new BARDA contract kicking in and the manufacturing coming online, the company is projecting $24 to $26 million in revenue for this year.
Okay, so that's a roughly 50% jump year over year. That's significant.
And looking further out, their projections show them hitting $50 to $55 million by 2028. That is tripling revenue in just 3 years, and that's before any contribution from EscharEx.
And again, a lot of that new revenue is very high margin.
Especially the BARDA revenue. It flows almost directly to the bottom line. It's pure profit.
So let's synthesize all of this into the final verdict. We've labeled this deep dive an asymmetric buy. Explain exactly why.
It all comes down to the simple relationship between risk and reward. In a normal biotech investment, you are risking 100% of your money to potentially make 500%. It's a coin flip with skewed payout.
Right. High risk, high reward.
Here, the risk is capped. The downside is defined.
Because of that defense business floor.
Right. Let's run the worst-case scenario. Let's say EscharEx fails. Let's say the Phase 3 trial is a complete disaster. What is the stock worth then? Well, the company still has $54 million in cash. It has a profitable, guaranteed government business, bringing in $20 million a year for the next decade. It owns a brand new state-of-the-art factory. The stock is not going to zero. It might drop 20%, maybe 30% at worst.
So the downside is limited and quantifiable?
But the upside. If EscharEx hits, which we think is a 90% probability event, you are positioned to disrupt a $2.5 billion market. The stock could double, triple, maybe even quadruple from here.
So you risk 20% to potentially make 300% or more?
That is asymmetry. That is a skewed risk-reward profile that you look for your entire career. It's a trade I will take every single day of the week.
It's just so rare to find that kind of heads I win, tails I don't lose much setup.
Especially in the biotech sector. It's a unicorn.
All right. We have covered a ton of ground today. We've gone from pineapples to the Pentagon, from burn units to the balance sheet. Before we sign off, I want to give the listener a quick cheat sheet. What are the specific dates or events they need to write on their calendar for the rest of this year?
There are 3 main events to watch for over the next 12 months.
Okay.
Number 1, Q1 2026. So right now, watch for the official press release announcing the final signature of that 10-year BARDA contract. That locks in the financial safety net.
Got it. Number 2.
Number 2, throughout 2026, watch for news on the regulatory approvals for the new manufacturing plant from the FDA and the EMA. That officially unlocks the supply chain for global expansion.
And number 3, the big one.
The big one, second half of 2026. The release of the EscharEx Phase 3 interim data from the value study.
That's the binary event.
That is the moment the market wakes up and realizes this isn't just a niche defense and burn company. It's a potential chronic wound giant. That is the major repricing event.
Excellent. I have to say I am really glad I didn't scrap this episode. The pineapple paradox turns out to be a pretty compelling story.
It's always the weird ones, the ones that don't fit neatly into a box that have the best alpha.
All right, here is my final thought for you, the listener. A little provocation to chew on as you go about your day. We talked a lot about Santal, that $360 million a year drug that hasn't changed since 1965. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the CEO of the company that owns Santal.
Hmm.
You are sitting in your corner office looking at your quarterly sales reports, and you see a competitor coming down the track that is not 10% better than you, not 20% better than you, but based on the data, is 63% versus your zero. And you have absolutely no defense.
It's the classic innovator's dilemma.
So what do? Do you try to fight them with marketing dollars and sales reps, or do you pick up the phone and try to buy them before they completely destroy your most profitable cash cow?
That is the multi-million, maybe billion-dollar question.
Just something to think about. This has been the MediWound Deep Dive on Griffonomics. As always, none of this is financial advice. Please do your own research, read the 10K, but keep your eyes on the data. We'll see you next time.
Stay curious.